Hello world! In one of the strangest cases cybersecurity researchers have seen in a while, racist malware targets the Pirate Bay. Embarrassingly for Apple, it has been discovered that iPhone's Wi-Fi can be broken with this one simple trick. And North Korea hacks a nuclear research institute run by their southern neighbours. That's in today's episode of The Week Web, where we break down and dissect cybersecurity related tech news. Usually malware tries to nab credentials, implement ransomware, or by some other means steal stuff. However, new malware dubbed Vigilante by Sophos is different. Described by researchers as one of the strangest cases they've seen in a while, upon execution, the malware displays a fake Windows error to distract the victim. However, in the background, the program sets to work, blocking the victim PC from being able to access the Pirate Bay, as well as a list of roughly 1,000 other piracy-related websites. The malware accomplishes this by editing the computer's host file, pointing a myriad of domains to localhost. You see, when you navigate to a website, your computer first checks its host file to see if there's a locally defined IP the domain should point to. By incorrectly pointing all of these domains to localhost, a user is prevented from ever loading these sites. This is known as sinkholing a domain. Though you can of course easily rectify the issue by simply modifying the host's file, removing the malicious entries in order to address the malware's malfeasance. The malware was spread via Discord as well as using torrents. Our currently unknown bad actor went to great lengths creating many incarnations of this program, having it masquerade as cracked versions of popular games, productivity tools, and even security products in a bid to trick users into downloading it. The malware also phones home to a server controlled by the attackers, reporting the file name of the executable which infected the victim, presumably so the miscreants can get an idea of which infection vectors are most effective. The attacker-controlled domain is a typosquat of OneFishier, a legitimate file hosting website. Typosquats, that's a new word I learned today. It refers to an intentional misspelling of a domain name in order to have the appearance of a particular legitimate site upon a quick glance. Weirdly, the malware doesn't do anything else. No saved password stealing, no hidden crypto miner, nothing. There isn't even a persistence mechanism, so after doing its deed, it just quits and that's that. Unless you rerun the program, of course. You're probably wondering where the R word comes into all of this. After all, racist malware isn't something you hear very often. The researcher explained when the malware's code was viewed in a hex editor, the file contains a racial epithet that is repeated more than 1,000 times. Bit random, we don't know which word specifically was used. I'm guessing this was done in an attempt to just shock any researcher who went through the code. I'm struggling to come up with any other reasoning. I mean, if you are an avid racist and want to convert others to your cause, listing the N-word or whatever word was used here a bunch of times hidden in some source code doesn't seem to be the best way of accomplishing that. But anyway, why would someone go to the effort of making and distributing malware which simply blocks piracy websites? Perhaps a small developer is being ripped off by pirates and just wanted to vent some anger, or it's possible a developer was laid off from a job and is blaming piracy for their woes. Or it could be the case that a piracy website simply wanted to block access to their competitors. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on the motives behind all of this. I'm at a bit of a loss. It's one of the most random cases of malware I've ever covered on this channel. A rather embarrassing situation has arisen for Apple. It's been uncovered that certain Wi-Fi network names have the ability to crash iPhones. Take this one for example. Trying to connect to a Wi-Fi network with this name, free coffee at Starbucks, will cause the whole Wi-Fi function of your iPhone to crash and become useless. And no, this isn't because iPhones are repulsed at the mere thought of overpriced subpar coffee. This is instead down to string format specifiers being embedded within the network name. A Danish researcher initially discovered that renaming his Wi-Fi network to this would cause his iPhone to crash upon connecting to it. This is all due to the software running on iPhones wrongly trying to interpret these identifiers as code. These string format specifiers are used in certain functions within the C programming language, which iPhones run on, to point to some other variable in order to include it within the string. In this case, by referencing variables which don't exist, you cause an iPhone to get confused and simply nope out. This is why it's important to sanitize user input, which means ensuring a program doesn't try to interpret user input as anything other than just arbitrary text. If text isn't sanitized, like in this case, you get bugs and sometimes exploitable ones. This problem is a classic vulnerability which has been known about for decades. It's something you might expect to find in a newbie's programming project, but not in iOS's core Wi-Fi functionality, so it is a little embarrassing for Apple. The bug essentially renders Wi-Fi useless on an iPhone until you manually reset network settings. A blog post by Airai, a cybersecurity firm, analyzes the security ramifications of this bug. They found that it isn't restricted to iOS and also affects macOS products. They noted that it obviously doesn't require physical presence on the part of an attacker to install substantiate this problem on a device. In addition, they suggested that this isn't just a harmless little bug, that it could actually lead to remote code execution. They explained that the nature of format string vulnerabilities is that when carefully crafted, they can be used to write arbitrary code into random or chosen parts of a machine's memory and eventually inject and execute code. However, Aireye hasn't provided any proof of concept code to illustrate this. Their assertion is purely theoretical. Though there is some disagreement between researchers here, a quick analysis by another security researcher explains in reality he doesn't think this case is exploitable, and explains that the cause of the bug itself stems from a logging function in iOS. Mitigating this bug is luckily rather simple, just don't connect to any Wi-Fi networks with dodgy looking names. A new North Korean hacking campaign has been unearthed. This targeted South Korea's Research Institute for Nuclear Energy, which seems to be becoming a bit of a theme on this channel, nuclear-related hacks. The North Korean hacker group Kimsuki are the suspects here. They also go by the names Black Banshee and Thallium. North Korea doesn't currently have nuclear power, but it's definitely on their wish list along with the weaponized variety. The motive for this intrusion isn't too tricky to figure out. Kimsuki infiltrated the government's run organization via a vulnerability in the VPN the institute operated. As far as the technical details go, this is pretty much it. We don't know exactly how they got in, though the situation is reminiscent of the Colonial Pipeline hack, where the attackers penetrated an insecure VPN because an employee reused the same password for the VPN on another account for a website which then had its password database leaked. Whether something similarly embarrassing happened here or whether the breach was more sophisticated, we just don't know. However, what we do know is that just days after the institute initially disclosed the hack, they then tried to undisclose it and began denying the fact that a breach even occurred. Maybe they came across some awkward details surrounding the intrusion and wanted to act as if nothing ever happened, though after a lot of confusion they then issued a press release in which they apologised for causing concern to the public due to this hacking accident, and that the statement that there was no hacking incident was a mistake. They seemingly made some excuses for the cover-up, but I don't think it's translated very well, and my Korean is a little rusty. A lot of the time after hacks there's a write-up with analysis from the company tasked with clearing up the mess. However, in this case we don't really have much to go on apart from hearsay. The institute says they're still investigating the details of the hack, but it's more than likely this was an intelligence gathering operation on the part of the North Koreans, as opposed to the miscreants trying to sabotage the institute. Kimsuki is well known for targeting South Korean organizations. A Malwarebytes report explains how they recently targeted South Korean government entities with phishing attacks using their Appleseed backdoor, which despite its name exploited Windows and Android devices. If you enjoy this kind of video, make sure to help me out by tickling the like button for the YouTube AI, as well as turning on those sub notifications. If you're looking for something to watch next, go check out my previous video on how an anonymous fugitive on the run for 10 years was finally tracked down and arrested in Mexico. If you get a lot of value from this series, do consider becoming a channel member. As always, sources will be linked in the video description. Stay tuned for more hacking videos, and have a good one.